I'm standing outside the walls of the ancient city of Jerusalem. You know, it's not a very big city, but you sure do hear a lot about it. It's been called Jerusalem the Golden. But probably Jerusalem is known best for its association with the Bible. And that's what this video series is all about. We're going to be talking about the message of the Bible. Now, when you study the Bible, it's important to stick it together correctly. You see, the Bible's like a big puzzle. It covers many different topics and subjects. And when you start to study it, you'll find that there's certain topics that are very large. They cover vast sections of the Scriptures. And then there's those that are really quite small. They only are touched upon. They're only mentioned briefly. Well, people take all these topics and begin to fit them together the best way they can, and they come up with something that makes sense to them. And this is what it looks like. And when they explain it to you, it seems reasonable. It sounds right. And as you look at it, it even has a certain amount of sense to it. It looks plausible. But there's a problem. It's supposed to look like this. When you study the Bible, you don't want to come up with something like this when this is what is supposed to be your end product. You need to keep that in mind. Now, to eliminate this sort of confusion, we will apply 4 universal principles of learning to arrive at a correct understanding of the Bible. Now, we use these principles all the time to understand subjects as diverse as history and physics. But in this case, we'll be using them with the Bible itself. The first principle of learning is the storytelling principle. Simply put, one doesn't read a story by starting halfway through the book, jumping to the last chapter, and then wrapping it up on page 1. Rather, you begin at the beginning and read sequentially through the story until you arrive at the conclusion. This is the best way to learn a historical narrative. And we're going to do that with the Bible. We're going to start with the beginning. The second principle of learning is the mathematical principle. And we're so used to this principle, we hardly even think about it. It goes like this. You don't start children in kindergarten by teaching them algebra. Rather, you begin with basic numbers. And some of you can remember doing this. You teach them to draw 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. And once they learn how to draw those numbers, then you teach them how to add them together. And once they know how to add them together, 1 plus 1 equals 2, 2 plus 2 is 4, so on and so forth, you teach them how to subtract. And eventually you move on to multiplication and division. And over the years, they eventually learn how to do algebra. And all that time, you are moving from the simple to the complex. If you skip the fundamentals, even basic algebra will be beyond your grasp. It's the same way with the Bible. If you neglect the foundations, your biblical understanding will incorporate some unusual ideas, resulting in the primary message being confused and misunderstood. And this brings us to the third principle of learning, the priority principle. Simply put, it tells us that whenever we learn something new, we should learn the most important things first. Now, in these sessions, we will not be doing an in-depth, comprehensive Bible study. We just don't have the time for that. But what we will do is this. We will cover key biblical events, enhancing our understanding by stringing them together in logical sequence, like hanging clothes spaced apart on a clothesline. The gaps can be filled in later, if you wish, after you have the overall picture. Now, let me mention something about this clothesline. If you're going to fill in the gaps later, it means you are going to have to leave some of the clothes off the line and down in the basket. It's the same way with your questions. I cannot answer all the questions you have about the Bible and teach you the key stories that we're trying to hang on this clothesline. I can't do that at the same time. So if you have questions that do not pertain to the clothesline, we'll write those down, but we'll save them till the end, and then we can go back and we can fill in those gaps as you wish. For now, it's enough to know that the stories we chronologically hang on the biblical clothesline are the most important events found in the Bible. And that leads us to the fourth principle, the clarity principle. Now, the Bible addresses many different subjects, and one might compare it to a cookbook with its many diverse recipes. And traditionally, the Bible was broken down into topics such as God, angels, man, prophecy, and so on and so forth. And the intention was to create better understanding. But in doing that, you need to be careful. You need to watch out. Some people, finding certain similarities between topics, attempt to combine those ideas, often resulting in a distortion of the original meaning. It's like jumping from a pickle recipe to a pie recipe because they both share the initial letter P. If you start with a pickle recipe and you end with a pie recipe, you'll bake the pickles until they're well browned. And pickles and pie may both share the letter P, but if you put them together, they make very bizarre food, don't they? Well, the mixing of the various topics is one of the contributing causes to why we find so many different church groups, religions, and cults that to a varying degree hold the Bible as their book. The pie has been mixed with the pickles. This is what they've ended up with. Now, in some cases, the confusion is minor, but in other cases, that confusion has had catastrophic results. It's been very serious. In the Bible, if you unintentionally leap around from one topic to another, you can end up with very distorted beliefs. In these sessions, to prevent that from happening, we will stick with one topic. We're going to focus on one major topic. This subject is the most basic theme in the Bible. And once you understand it, the Bible will make profound but simple sense.